Go ahead and call the meeting to order. It's right 6 o'clock straight up. And we'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Carol Morgan. And please remain standing for a moment of silent prayer.
You ready?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bennett?
Here.
Commissioner Blackburn?
Here.
Commissioner Dunn?
Here.
Commissioner Mason?
Here.
Commissioner Molnar?
Here.
Commissioner Velez? Commissioner Williams?
Here.
Commissioner Zaklama?
Here.
Chair Stewart?
Here.
Vice Chair Lewis?
Here.
Oral communication is next, but we have no visitors, so I think we'll pass right on to that. Before I start tonight, I would like to mention one thing. We didn't have a meeting 2 months ago. I would like to close this meeting in honor of our Commissioner, Mr. Phil, and then he was a great guy, and he's hard to replace, but he passed very unexpectedly, so let's remember him in our prayers. May he rest in peace. Thank you. Okay, we'll go number 1, which is Community and Senior Service meeting minutes. This is all the way back to May. See, I think everybody was here except for Paul. And while I'm on that subject, Paul is back on the commission. He's been here a couple of times. Welcome back, Paul. If everybody recall the minutes of the report, please. I did read through them again.
I'll motion to approve the minutes with any changes.
We have a second?
Second.
We have no changes, so they're approved as presented. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to new business. And number 2 is the consideration to hold monthly meetings of the Community and Senior Services Commission, request by Commissioner, which is me. Before we get too much started on it, let's see a show of hands by the commissioners who would like to have meetings every month. Pretty much, well, it's the majority anyhow.
I think it should be a discussion, because I don't care either way, I just want to hear the reasoning.
Yeah,
See if
well,
it's worthwhile.
it's my idea.
Right.
And our meeting it was actually in May, the meeting went 1 hour and 45 minutes. And sometimes we have a lot of things to talk about, but there's more than that. I think the camaraderie is better when we come every month. And it's hard to remember things sometimes when it's 60 days old. And I remember when I've been on this committee before, I think at one time we had two meetings a month, years and years ago. So my idea is, if it goes by staff that it would be acceptable, my idea is that we would give up our stipend of $50 for the one like tonight, and that would apply to the extra month. So we wouldn't get any stipends at all. That would help pay for the staff and everything for that.
That's
extra.
my understanding, is the stipends wouldn't change, or it wouldn't increase the total amount.
Yeah, well, I was thinking, if we have to give them up, would we be willing to do that? And would the staff be willing to go for that, something like that, you know? I don't have to talk about it, but we'll have it for discussion. And Steve, yes?
Yeah, I mean, I thought about it after reading the agenda, and I don't care either way. I agree with you, there's some camaraderie, and there's some definite continuity that takes place on a monthly meeting. The money is not why I'm on the commission. $50 here and there, honestly, is not an issue. There are those, I understand, it pays for gas to get here. Some company outside the city, so I get it. I live real close, so it's not an issue for me either way. And I won't fault someone for saying that they would like to keep the stipend again either way. My bigger concern would be if we do make this change, can we also look at day of the week? Because one of the things that we have going on is, for instance, right now, tonight at 7 o'clock is the Planning Commission And so when we meet, normally we meet on the same night as a planning commission meeting, which precludes a lot of us from going to those meetings. If we want to speak or have things, we'd have to miss our meeting, and I don't really want to do that. So maybe that's something else we can bring up as well. Maybe not tonight, maybe in the future, is moving it to a Wednesday or moving it to a Thursday or whatever day everyone agrees with, so that those of us who do want to speak at a planning commission meeting will have an opportunity. It's probably my only concern of the monthly, is it really knocks us out of the planning commission scenario. But as from a day of the week, I'll go with whatever the commission. I was here as well when it used to be monthly, and I didn't mind. I do have a concern about staff time, like you said. I think there's a cost to that.
I know that.
But I think that can be mitigated in some way, form. And the other thing is I'd be curious to know if council has to approve that, because I don't know if they have to approve our meeting schedule or not.
Well, it's only discussion tonight, so it can go
Yeah.
from there, but my thing is about Tuesday. I want to change the night. I like Tuesday night because we can go to the planning commission afterwards. And if we had it every month, I think we'd be pretty much done by 7:15. We wouldn't miss that much.
Exactly.
But-
True.
Mhm.
True.
And so the two things has to happen. The commission has to agree to give up their, if that's what's going to happen, our $50, and the staff has to agree to have a meeting. So you can take it back to staff and see how it works out. And if it comes back to where you want to do it, we'll have a vote next time to see if we want to give up the money. How's that?
Do we need to vote on direction for them, or is it just kind of let it go? I'm just curious.
Do what?
Do we need to vote or motion it in for
I think
direction?
why don't we just let them go ahead and see if they even be interested in something like that, because maybe they won't even want to do it. Go ahead.
I just have a couple questions. Are there any provisions in staff contracts or something like that that say anything about the night of the week that they would have to stay past normal hours or anything like that? Okay, yeah,
Okay.
just wanted to see, just
Come out
to,
on Sunday if you want.
okay. Probably
Get
not.
something.
That's fine. I just wanted to see if there was something that was negotiated or anything like that that prevents that from happening. And then, here's my biggest concern. Quite frankly, I've been on this commission for, better part of a decade now, and, I struggle with the idea that we need additional time when, quite frankly, I feel like our duties are really not taken all that seriously by the city council. And so it's kind of one of those things where, we requested specific direction on things from city council. City council sat on their hands and does nothing on that. And so, my perspective is, if we're going to be an advisory commission that meets more often, I want to see our advice taken seriously. And I just don't think it is all that much as it stands now. I think individuals have power to advise individual council members, but beyond that, I don't think that there's any kind of cohesion that comes out of here that ultimately necessarily has any impact on policy or anything like that. So, I think there are good things that we do. Obviously, community development block grants, or stuff on CIP, etc. I think that's all positive for the community, but until we're a commission that has a purpose beyond those things, I question the need for an additional meeting, every month for that.
Anyone else have anything to say?
Well, that's a thought that I hate to admit to, but I like a different night instead of the planning commission. I think that's really important because people that want to go to that are here, and you don't want to miss your commission meeting. So we might want to change the night.
But there's one problem about that.
But
The building's already open for the planning commission. So if we do it on a Wednesday night or something, we'll be any people here.
that's true.
Make a difference.
Yeah.
Yes, Paul?
I'm just curious, Steve, how many times have you spoken at the planning commission last 6 months?
No,
No comment.
but that's not to say I won't.
Yeah.
But I know, but I will tell you, not just speaking for myself, there are people here who do take an interest in various topics that come
Oh,
up.
I enjoy it myself.
I know you go all the time. But you're correct, and actually someone like yourself would be a good example of someone who probably would like to be at the commission meeting because you do tend to attend pretty frequently. And by being here, you could end up missing those. And so it's not so much a self-serving recommendation. It was more of there are people here that may want to, and in the future, maybe I will, I don't know, but it just depends on the topic. There are some things I've thought about, but I have not actually spoken at that meeting.
All right. Anything else? So we'll take it back to staff and
Sure.
take it from there, okay?
Okay, just a couple of things
Yeah.
regarding staff. Aside from the time as the resources, our director is currently over human resources, and so she's attending and dealing with the HR commission as well. So in some cases that there may be a conflict that she's not able to attend, and in which case you get Mike or myself in this kind of position. And to echo Commissioner Lewis's point that if we're going to meet on a monthly basis, maybe there would be some additional business to consider. They're looking at the agenda. It's fairly light for having missed a month. There's only a couple of updates on some programs, so hopefully there would be additional business to consider before the commission.
Yeah, that part's true, but if I might have thought about it, we had a big meeting, But like tonight is very light meeting.
Mhm.
It's true. Well, it's 50-50, so we'll see what happens. Just
Okay.
let us know, okay? All right, we'll go ahead and go to number 3.
If I can, one last thing. I mean, ultimately, getting into additional responsibilities or sort of along those lines, one of the things that I think that this commission should be looking at, considering that we have this, sort of public service department that is created, with the combination of public works and community services, quite frankly, why don't we have some sort of oversight on the public works aspect of things? I don't really think that there is that kind of oversight going on. There is no commission that does that. And I would also state that we have a traffic committee that's probably the least transparent committee in this entire city. It's a bunch of police officers who basically make up their own rules as they go and make up their own laws effectively and change the speed limits, put a stop sign there, campaign promise here, campaign promise there. To me, that's not really transparency, and I think that the people should have the opportunity to voice their concerns on that issue, if that's something that this commission is going to consider with regard to having additional meetings. So.
Very good, thank you.
Well stated.
All right, we'll go on to number 3, Proposition 68, funding opportunities.
Well, this was from the previous meeting, and last June, voters of California passed the Proposition 68, which authorized the state to borrow about $4 billion for investments in outdoor recreation, land conservation, and water projects. There's a number of different grant projects that or categories that exist. A couple of those were things that we were interested in. There's a competitive and a per capita. And we looked initially at the competitive, which that application was due August 5th. We did not submit one because we did not, looking at the criteria and the rubric, the points assignments for various things, we didn't think we would be competitive. The bond targets highly urbanized areas that are park poor, that is 3 park acres per 1,000 people is how they define that, or by the median household or poverty. The median household income is $51,000 that they set as a benchmark. And so they state developed this tool where you would put your cursor in a location. We looked at each of the parks, and that table is on the next page. For each of the parks, and for a half-mile radius, it would generate these numbers: the park acreage per 1,000 people, the median household income, and those living below the poverty rate. And so, while the first 6 of those, the ones that are asterisks, they did qualify, or they were eligible based on the park acreage, you can see that the median household income was far above what they were looking for as a minimum. So. We're looking to, the second program is the per capita, which cities would be allocated a certain portion. We're waiting on that information. We were told that that is supposed to come at the end of the summer, and we will consider projects at that time when we see what the criteria is and how much we would have available allocated per capita. So if you have any questions, be happy to answer.
Any questions? We'll jump in.
Yeah. So the two criteria for the dependent report was the less than 3 park acres and or is it or?
It's or. That's just to establish the eligibility. And then from there, eligible projects are, they're all put together and kind of slotted statewide. And beyond that, your grant application is contingent on those things and weighted and assigned points. So there are various other things like the public input. There was a pretty robust public input component where for maximum points you need 5 public meetings, with a couple of those being on a weekend or evening, and for more accessibility, environmental design, and that sort of thing that we just didn't think we'd be, for the projects we're looking at, didn't think would be competitive.
Is this going to be an annual application, or that was a one-time thing?
That was it, yeah. The per capita maybe, it'll depend, not for this particular bond. The bond may continue in another fashion if that's put on the ballot again. This is a continuation of a previous bond.
If it comes up again, I mean, is there a disadvantage to going for those top 6 projects, or kind of getting projects together on those parks and seeing? Is there a drawback to submitting
No, there's not a drawback to submitting.
in the future, maybe?
Do we have to have specific plans to submit, or is it just request for money?
The proposal has to be pretty well thought out.
So
and
detailed as to what we want to do?
Right, yeah, and
So-
with public input behind that, informing that.
So you're looking at probably like, we want to do playgrounds and here's how we want to do it, that kind of detail.
Right.
Or we want to do restrooms, or we want to do whatever. So you're looking for a real detailed.
Right.
Kelly, just curious, what kind of new recreational opportunities would qualify? Is that a fairly nebulous term, or is that something that is focused? Like, for example, you mentioned restrooms. Would restrooms be off the table as opposed to?
No, it would be ancillary piece. Maybe you establish a new playground with or a splash pad with a restroom. Kind of
Okay,
thing.
so
be
there would
a-
have to be something specifically recreational about it. It couldn't just be, putting in new restrooms
Right.
like, needed at Shadow Oak Park or something like
Right.
that. Okay.
Correct.
All right, just wanted to have clarity there. Also, with regard to preference, is there any sort of preference in terms of creation of new parks versus creation of new recreational opportunities?
For the state?
Yeah, as far as
For
the
the-
program is concerned.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Is it more-
creating something new is going to score higher than
More new,
just
a new park would be
than
something.
just
that-
renovating.
Okay,
Right.
so basically we'd have to bulldoze people's homes in order to do it. That's what.
Right.
Right, I mean-
It's only a couple of points difference, but
Okay.
it's looked at more favorably to
Okay,
create something new.
Well, on that point, if you don't mind, Nick, is like the add-on houses over at Palmview or Cameron.
Right.
Could they be used to buy, in essence, houses that are going on the market? That would be a question I would parlay onto yours.
I mean, I don't know why not. I think you'd have to, right? I mean, for new park creation.
Because you're expanding park at that point.
Yes.
It's Kind of,
I mean,
it's kind of
acquisition of
expanding.
the land.
Infill development is probably what the bellwether for most cities anyway,
Mhm.
so. Question?
You said the drop dead date was August 5th?
That's correct.
Yeah.
For the competitive, the per capita hasn't, which is what we're going to focus on, that hasn't been finalized. That's supposed, the guidelines for that have not been finalized. And the allocations haven't been released as well, as what we could expect.
So there's no criteria yet, what we need for that?
No, the guidelines haven't been
Okay.
released.
Had we had the meeting in July, would we have met the criteria, do you think? Or do you think that was still too short?
Unlikely. If we had
That's a good question.
If we had a public meeting, if we identified something, it would be very aggressive.
So we not only
Like-
had to make a decision, but we'd had to have public input.
It was primarily informational.
Gotcha.
Any more questions on Prop 68 there? All right, seeing
What are
none.
we going to do?
So when do we find out how much we'll get
We
per
don't have
capita?
information because we can't use.
The state told us at the end of the summer, which a few weeks, but we haven't seen anything yet. And when we do, we'll pass that along.
So all motion to receive and file.
Second.
All in favor of receiving file? Everybody would be unanimous, probably.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll move on to the number 4, which is facility usage report. You're updated. I looked good, well, pretty good attendance up there. Looked at his park, it's pretty amazing thing, those numbers right there.
Mr. Chair.
Go Steve.
A couple of questions, and I don't know if you guys went through this extremely detailed. I'm not going to pick on anyone if you did or didn't. But on the Mount SAC classes, if you look at March and April, those numbers are identical both months.
Oh, yeah.
Which
We
I'm
went through this before.
trying to understand that because I've never seen that happen on a dozen classes. Second question I have with that is in honor of our late Phil Kaufman. He used to attend the home gardening class, and he questioned the last time this came through that I remember 46 people daily attending that class, because he said there was typically no more than a dozen, right? And so again, I questioned 46 people attending that class. And so I'm really curious how we're getting those class counts, or if Mount SAC is even accurate in those counts, because I have a hard time with people registering and not showing up, because it doesn't really show use in my mind. They did change the numbers for May, which was great. The numbers are off, although home gardening went to 36. I still think that's high. And I think there are some other classes in there. Forgive me, guys, I'm kind of venting. I think some of these numbers are just way inflated for the Mount SAC classes. So I'd really like to see, I'd really like to understand how they're coming to these numbers in that, because I just don't believe that they're accurate as you go through. And then the community center, beginning internet, photography, and intro to computers all have 48 people attending in April, but they had 12 attending in March. So they had a 400% increase on 3 classes, which is awesome. If that's accurate. I'd like to know if that's accurate or not, because it seems to me a lot for the Shadow Work Community Center to jump that much. Again, if it's true, I think it's amazing to see that kind of growth. I just have a hard time believing that growth took place. So I'd like to see or understand the numbers.
What's my understanding of Mount SAC provides these numbers?
Okay. Can we,
Beyond that, I don't have a response, but we can look into it.
and say, can we get them to
Verify those.
verify those
Yes.
numbers and to get us to understand what the actual numbers really are, who's registering and who's actually attending? Because like I said, and I very vividly remember Phil arguing that he attends that class and that it's very unattended, and so I just have a hard time with 48. The only other thing that I will, and the calculation, there's some things in there, if you guys want to talk about the other stuff, on the back of the page I can get into the city app, a couple of questions I have, but I don't want to maximize time, so if anyone else wants to talk, we can come back to me in a minute.
I'm just curious, what difference does it make?
I don't know that it makes a difference. I just want accurate numbers, because I mean, ultimately, if they're telling us that all these people are attended, I don't know if we're subsidizing anything. I don't know if it's time at the center, if there's room for other classes to be done, if these ones aren't as popular as they are. I think there's things to be done there. I don't know if it means a lot to us, but I think that it definitely, we should have accurate numbers. I think they should be legit.
Is that part of their job?
I would say that it's sitting on our agenda, so yes, that would be my assumption, that our agenda and our purview makes that part of it, otherwise we wouldn't be reviewing it. So yes.
Anything else?
In all the years I've been on this commission.
I went to
it's never
actually
been
one of these
brought up.
things at Shadow Park, and I was kind of disappointed. They do have about 70 people in there. As soon as I walked in, the first thing I was told is, you can't be in here.
Why?
And that kind of upset me because I figured it's a public area, but they said you had to be registered.
Oh, yeah, you have, yeah.
But, I mean, then I kind of explained, well, I didn't want to say, well, I'm a commissioner, well, I can do anything I want to.
I would have done that.
I just said, okay, and they said, well, you can stand outside the class, but I think if, like I was there really to see like, how many people are actually there? I saw it happening and I happened to be walking in the park and I was like, being said it, I just wanted to verify that was people were actually using the park, and the numbers were, and they did have about. I didn't actually make a count because
They didn't let
they
you.
kicked me out.
You couldn't stay.
But I don't know why we would even have MountSAC dictating to us that somebody can't be there. I don't know what's the rules that we have set up with them.
Well, I know when I took a
Classes,
class, I had to register.
Mm-hmm.
I had to register, and then they sent that in. So,
Yeah, well,
that's
Yeah.
not.
but
Do you remember what class it was?
it was that one on Thursday at 1 o'clock. And that was I can't remember the lady's name. She told me her name, but it was more like, I don't want you in here. I
Wow.
mean, they didn't like not. It wasn't, are you registered? It was, you can't be in here. You know, so.
How welcoming.
But
Yeah.
again, it was just something I was interested in also. And I didn't want to push, I'm a kind of a back in the corner guy, so. But if how do you verify some of these numbers, especially if you go there
Yeah.
and people
It's the only way.
don't want you to monitor the class?
We'll look into that and verify that with the staff that are on the site.
What are the costs or the benefits to the numbers? Like if there's 50 people in there versus 5 people, does it cost the city anything, or does it, or?
No, I think it's just, as Commissioner Bennett
Just the
alluded to, is the
electricity
opportunity
stuff.
cost potentially, and maybe there's something, if there's nobody using the space, maybe there would be a better opportunity to put something else in there that more people could take advantage of.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the observation, because I wonder if the numbers are capacity or if the numbers are, I think it makes a difference to our recommendation to the community.
Anything else? I got one thing.
Go ahead.
And I'm surprised there was no abandoned cars for a whole month, first of all, but that's something that amazes me is, it says other issues, which explains what other issues are, and 153 of them, that's like 5 a day. For shopping carts or homeless issues, that's a lot, 5 a day.
Well, Dave, to your point, and this is one of my concerns that I was going to bring up next, is I understand the app, we're reporting only what the app is used to report. And I understand we're not going into PD, we're not going into fire, we're not going into other departments. And so I think this gives a skewed result of that. And I'll use the resident started homeless Facebook page that's kind of gained momentum here in the city. If you go onto that Facebook site, you see constantly reports of homeless here, homeless there, homeless this, homeless that, and constant conversation about calling it into PD and calling it into various departments or whatever it may be. And I think that they're doing something positive, and I think it's good, but it doesn't reflect the actual reporting that's going on. So I do think that we need to find a way to get that information from other departments. I don't know how easy that would be on staff. I don't know what the repercussions, I don't know all that. It's something you can try to allude to, or maybe you'll have to come back with. But like I kind of laughed, you get in here and you mentioned abandoned cars. I thought the same thing, none reported on here at all. I thought that was tough. But you get in here and they talk about where it says other issues, and if you look down at the bottom, it says other issues include the following: homeless issues, shopping cart retrieval, police issues, tree requests, as well as various other types that don't fit into the above listed types. And so again, it's kind of skewed. And then somewhere else in here, and I read it, and I don't remember where it is, but it basically says that it's only related to the app or related to, and if you look at the iWorks, which is the other one, again, it's skewed a little bit because it's not a true accurate ability. And so for some of us, we sit on a homeless committee here, a subcommittee, and so if we're really looking at homeless because we want to see a change, this isn't giving us an accurate view of what we're really dealing with. If police has their own reports, if community services has theirs, if public works has theirs, and they're all on different systems, whatever it may be, I think we need to find a way to unify some of those areas. Maybe it's a different report, I don't know. I guess I'm really looking for direction at this point from staff to see what we can do. But there's a lot of stuff in here, and it's actually pretty funny, Dave, on your point. There's another one in here where it talks about shopping carts, and it says like 11 were picked up, or 11 were reported, and it says like 140 or so were picked up. So obviously there's people out there picking them up, which is great, but only a few got reported. So, and I'm saying I can't make people use the app, get it, totally understand that. But I just think that they're using other avenues, and we need to find a way to bring that data here as to how much of a purview we have. I know from the homeless side, it's definitely more our purview a little bit. As for others, maybe aren't as important. But like, I see a lot of not complete report, if you want to put it that way. Sorry, guys.
Sorry.
I have a couple of questions just relating to, there's a section in the Public Services Facility Usage and Maintenance Reports that references things that are being referred, and I wanted to kind of get some clarity on that. With regard to graffiti, does that mean that, what does that mean? What does it mean referred? Is that,
Let me answer that. Graffiti that's being referred is being referred to code enforcement because it is on private property, and we're not allowed to touch private property unless it's in view of public.
okay,
And meaning on the street or street, viewable from the street.
right, okay,
Or accessible for us to do it without liability.
understood. And then I was going to ask the same thing with regard to code enforcement. It seems like there's a lot of referring going on and not a lot of resolution. So I was just curious, I mean, maybe that's beyond the purview of this commission, maybe that's something more planning oriented, but I am curious as to how we have, close to 100 referrals each month and, really zero resolution.
I can answer that too.
Okay, go right ahead.
Most of the referred is either majority of them are code enforcement or referred to LA County because it's an LA County jurisdiction or other cities. Or even the flood wash, if there's issues in the wash area, that's LA County. So those are other entities. Referred means it's going to other entities or a code enforcement division for processing, and code enforcement
Well,
then creates a report.
I guess what I don't understand is why is there this assigned category versus the referred? Because if it's referred with in-house, I don't really think that that's referred. I think it's assigned, right?
It's referred to another department.
Okay.
But assigned is in-house, meaning in the maintenance department, assigned to our crews.
I guess I just don't understand why you would kind of have that sort of nebulous term that really doesn't, it's not very helpful from an analytics standpoint. I think that those should be separated out. If it's assigned in-house to be taken care of, then it's assigned. And
Yeah, assigned means assigned to the crews in maintenance.
right. And if it's referred out to another entity, I think those are two different things. They shouldn't necessarily be included in one data point. So,
Okay. We are working on getting one single app versus two.
Okay.
So once we get that, we can create more categories, and that is a good suggestion to maybe do referred to code enforcement or referred to outside entities.
Yeah, I mean,
That way it's more
maybe
clear.
that can be, quite frankly, I think that would be more canceled than anything else because, you could say canceled and referred or something. I don't know. In any case, if that's all it is, then that's fine, I guess.
Well, not saying. I know we switched who we're handling coyote issues with, I think effective July 1, if I remember correctly, is when the city changed. So I know this is before that switch. I noticed every month it says 0 reports of coyote sightings. Again, it's a similar situation. I'd be curious to know what they're getting for reports from the new one if we can have that brought in.
Okay.
Because I think that we all know that's an issue, and
Yes.
some residents have definitely made it more. I think that we should have accurate ideas as to what is actually being reported.
Okay. Yeah, the app actually refers them directly to ICH to report. And that's
So we-
why
so we would
that's why
know.
we get 0, because, yeah. But we can get that from
That's it.
ICH.
Why have it on the report?
ICH.
Just curious.
Because it's a category in the app still,
Okay.
to refer them over to.
I'd still like the number. I mean, I wouldn't mind the number. If we're going to get this reported, might as well make it accurate.
Okay.
Right?
I just have one question for staff. What is the policy as far as the coyote abatement, or is it, if we have an issue, somebody has an issue with the coyotes in their yard, basically who do we contact? Who would somebody contact?
Depends on the degree
Of what's
the
issued.
interaction.
Correct.
Yeah, if they're just there, then you're supposed to, throw
Feed 'em.
rocks and haze at them, and whistle and so forth. It's not until maybe they, attack you or an animal.
Well, there is on the website, it's actually a banner on the website that directs you to the coyote plan. And there's also a page where you can actually report a sighting. But it does refer you that if there is an attack or an animal that is killed due to that attack, to dial 911 and they'll send somebody out. But then those reports go to the new animal control company for processing, and then they refer it over to the Department of Agriculture, which tracks the coyotes' activity, and then does they do like classes, or they go out and speak to the residents of that area to educate them on how to deal with them and or prevent them from coming in your property, etc.
We, at one time, the LA County had I think 2 gentlemen that would come out and snare the coyotes and use dog food, unless they want to make sure there are no dogs in your neighborhood.
Right.
But they would snare the coyote, and the guy would come out the next morning and stick a .22 to the coyote's head and shoot him.
Ah, the good old days.
Whoa.
Now, when you say woo, I mean, that sounds kind of bad, but wait till you have 2 or 3 cats or a dog and chewed up.
Yep.
You say woo, 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 instead of just poor
Yeah.
coyote.
Yeah, that's all under the control of Department of Agriculture now.
I know.
But now they want to.
They do come out and trap.
coexist.
Yeah, now it's coexist.
Yeah.
Make them a pet.
No.
Anything else on the facility usage?
Yeah,
Dr. Zach?
so I remember one of the original intents to ask for this information was to see if there's anything we could do with Measure A funds to expand usages of parks, if certain parts of the park are.
It's coming up next.
Yeah, I don't mean to talk about the Measure A funds, I meant to talk about the usage of the parks. If you look at, just some things to highlight, sports field rental, it looks like the most popular thing is West Covina girls softball from March to July. That's 900. That's almost double the next one, but a lot more than all the. So it's the most popular thing. So when we're making decisions or recommendations, or just observations, we should notice that the girls softball is really popular. If there's things we could do to enhance those fields, or things we could do to bring vendors in to, if you advertise, hey, there's 900 participants in 3 months for this, sponsors and other vendors would like to come in and capitalize on that. And then if you draw the same sort of thinking towards Cortez Community Park, look at large parties and receptions. There's 5 of them, I guess it says, and there's 1,000 monthly, 1,000 participants for those large parties. So, I mean, that looks popular too. So when we're going to make recommendations or observations, highlighting that large parties are pretty popular there, and whatever we could do to capitalize on that, or whatever we could do to enhance that for the community would be good. And if you just go along through the other parks and facilities, just looking at what the most popular ones are and being able to put resources towards that, or tell the community about it so that vendors could come in and it would enhance the experience for the participants, but at the same time, vendors in the community would raise awareness, probably draw a bigger crowd, and small businesses could benefit from that too. So, it's just something to observe and highlight that there are really, really popular things, and then there are some things that are, I'm sure, that, they've been around for a while and it's good, but the ones that are really popular, we can make recommendations towards enhancing facilities for those things.
Thank you.
Well, last thing, Dave. Can you explain what the Athens Low Income Senior Citizen New Applicants is? Do they have a program for that? I'm
We
unfamiliar.
do. We accept applications on behalf of Athens from seniors for their discount. They don't pay the regular rate, they pay a discounted senior rate.
For the luncheons and things, or for?
No, for their trash service.
Okay, gotcha.
One
I don't qualify, so I'm kind of curious.
You're not there yet.
I'm not there yet. Soon coming, but I just never heard of it, so I was just kind of curious what that was. So, okay, that makes more sense. I appreciate that.
Does it go on age only or income or?
Age.
I think it's by age.
Age,
yeah.
and it covers regular trash bins. It does not cover a,
Anything larger
The
than
big
the
barrels
regular.
when they bring them in, yeah.
Do we know what the discount is? Do we know, just out of curiosity, because I know
it's
seniors.
about 40%
Off just the receptacles right now, all the fees and taxes and franchise fees and all this stuff.
on the base. And that's done through senior citizen, through
So they
Joe.
accept applications on
That's
behalf
where
of
the
Athens.
applications are put in.
Wish my mom knew about it for years and she didn't.
Dave,
Yes,
just
Sandy?
wondering if it's a typo, but for the nutrition program, for March, it was 120, and then if you see April and May, it's 3,420, and May, it's 3,450. So people weren't eating in March, I guess.
That's a good question.
Yes.
I should put that down if we had to cover that.
Yeah,
March
that's
is a rough month.
I was just wondering where they all went.
You went there 4 or 5 times a day, they're not hungry.
Going down to your restaurant.
They were getting 3 meals instead of 1.
What is the
Maybe
nutrition
there's
program?
a,
Yeah, I said, what is it, to be honest?
It's a low income, go ahead, you know more about that. The nutrition program, yes.
It's the meals program at the senior center. The daily serve lunches, I think caps 150, 180, so that was, the 120 is probably one day.
Oh, the daily, yeah, that's the daily rate.
Yeah.
oh, 'cause, yeah, it was under monthly total.
Isn't that where they pay like a couple dollars when they show up for the luncheon and they get
Or
food?
free.
It's free, a suggested donation of $2.
That's what-
That's largely funded through the county, AAA, and CDBG.
And it's first come, first served.
Right, I know they cap it.
We have 150 tickets.
Yeah, my son's actually volunteered for their Thanksgiving one, and so I'm familiar with that part, and I'm assuming,
Yeah.
now that I understand it, I'm assuming it's the same thing, just
Yes.
not a holiday version.
So actually 3,400 that'd be a month, that could be per month.
Right.
Yeah, that's good. Anything else for anybody? We'll move on to continued business from the last meeting, number 5, major aid update, request by Commissioner Lewis. We'll see how we're gonna spend that $2 million windfall.
Yeah.
Well, the Prop A was, 2 propositions were passed in 92 and 96. There was a money that the city received, and I think there is a listing of all the projects that were completed with that funding. There's a county report here that is attached that shows that. And we had, as part of that grant, or part of that parcel tax, a portion of that was set aside for maintenance. And that was the $2 million, $2.5 million that was discussed. Measure A was passed in November 16, and that's a similar thing because the Prop A had sunsetted. And this is a quarter-cent sales parcel tax, or quarter-cent parcel tax on LA County properties to ensure recreation or park funding. This is in perpetuity. There is no sunset unless the voters change that. So along with this Measure A funding, there is also a maintenance component. And the issue I think that we brought up last time was that we couldn't spend any of the new maintenance money until the old maintenance money is expended.
But it has to be for improvements first. That has to come first, right? Before we can dip into the other money. In other words,
On
it's-
existing, what we
it's
used for
main-
before.
I believe it was, we have to spend it on maintenance, right? We have to deplete the maintenance fund before we can spend the new
For the
money
improvement?
for the improvements.
Right.
Is that correct?
Is that correct?
No, we can't, we have to spend the old maintenance money before we spend the new maintenance money.
Sorry, that's
We,
what I
we can
said.
do that. Well, you said improvement, so I took that as the capital improvements.
Oh, okay. All
So
right.
we can do a project
Okay.
with the, remaining balance still being spent out for maintenance and on the old projects. We just can't maintain the new project with the new maintenance money. And that new maintenance money, once we exhaust the old maintenance money, can be used on the previously done projects as well.
Okay.
So,
I think the key paragraph was that last one, because it reminds us that we're going to be involved in the meetings for the different districts.
that's correct. There were a couple, as part of this Measure A development and process, there were a couple of community
Right.
meetings and identifying, the community needs assessments.
Yeah,
And one of the projects that has always, or has been a high priority is the Shadow Oak project. And part of that is the tot lot and a restroom and I forget what the other amendment, the parking lot. And I think that's a close to $2 million thing all together. We have a little bit of money somewhere else, I believe, but that was just paying for a very small portion of that. And so annually, we're looking at about $325,000 in project money and another $75,000 in maintenance money. 325 doesn't get you a lot. And we can bank up to 5 years of that. So even, we don't do a project for 5 years, sit on it, and then we, plan for something a little larger and be able to do that. But anticipate that we'd be, with having gone to districts, that we would be doing new community meetings to identify what people want in those districts.
So quick question.
Yes.
Okay, so obviously the list of projects that were funded by the Los Angeles County Regional Parks and Open Space District and the prior measures were provided. I think the question that I'm still left with is, what are we going to be using? How are we going to be depleting this maintenance money so that we can move forward?
Well, we have some projects that are listed in attachment 2. And some of these have been pre-approved already or have started up.
Well, no. Those are in, that's attachment 1.
Yeah,
The ones
that's
that are closed.
attachment 1.
Attachment 2 is the maintenance, the M&S projects here. So I guess the question is, how quickly are these going to be moving forward from a maintenance perspective, I guess?
We've received quotes on the first project. Let's see, the others are in the capital improvement schedule budget. The Heritage and Gulfster are underway, if not completed already. And then the annual maintenance of the splash pad, that's just something that is ongoing.
Right.
We spent, while we have a balance of a little over $2 million, we've spent $1 million in maintenance on these projects to this point. And so $2 million doesn't go very far with prevailing wage. I mean, the $400,000 to do rubberized surfacing at a few parks. And the parking lot that's honestly probably a conservative estimate that was given by our engineering department, but once that goes out to bid, that'll probably be higher.
So basically, we have slightly less than $1 million left? Is that-
No, I'm saying it was probably 3, we're about
Oh, we're at two
we're-
left after,
yes.
after these expenditures, okay, so.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I confused what you were saying.
Okay.
So,
So what is the balance after these expenditures that are proposed here?
what I was saying, this is about,
5 million.
It's actually,
Yeah,
in the
it's
staff
fine.
report, there's a balance on the first page. It says at the bottom paragraph what the balances are.
Right, I understood that, but what I was trying to figure out is that pre or post these projects?
I got you, good question.
that's pre.
That's, okay, that's pre.
So
So
it's-
basically, we have a little less than $1 million in maintenance from the old
Money.
props that were passed that we need to identify to some project to expend that money on, right?
Right.
Okay. So what other projects are on the horizon to deplete that fund so that, again, we can kind of get on to utilizing our Prop A money?
We'd have to go back through these and identify some things. Those are some large-scale projects, but the problem is that when these were put together, there wasn't a lot of maintenance associated with them.
Right.
You know, asphalt and that sort of thing. So we would, in addition to those, come up with some new things.
Okay, so with regard to like the redoing of the parking lot over at Cortez Park, is that, are we talking about a complete resurface, or are we talking just slurry, or what are we talking about?
Complete resurface, the
Okay.
thing's alligatoring, right? I think that's what they say.
Okay.
The trees are going through the asphalt, they're
Okay.
trip hazards, and so probably have to get into some tree removal
Okay.
there as well, and redo
Okay.
the whole thing. And so it's gonna be a significant project.
Okay, all right. It explains why it's $250,000 or whatever, notwithstanding the relative absurdity of that cost, but whatever.
Prevailing.
Okay, so I guess the question is, what is staff or what is the council working on to identify additional maintenance opportunities, shall we say?
Just looking at these, and then there are opportunities as things, they call them one-time maintenance. If there's we had a tree get struck by lightning, knocked over the Heritage Bridge, and so that was replaced. And things like that, or if it's something's vandalized beyond the typical maintenance, then we replace that. But not necessarily. Just going through these and trying to use the money most effectively and efficiently, and not necessarily just expending it to get to the next pot of money, because $70,000, again, that doesn't get you very much in terms of maintenance, and that's going to accumulate. So just moving forward and trying to use the money as best we can to attend to the needs that we have.
I mean, I understand. I mean, look, it's one of those things where unfortunately the voters didn't really have an understanding that this was probably going to be the net result. So, we cut our nose to spite our face effectively with regard to the maintenance aspect of this. So, unfortunately, I just look at it as a sunk cost. We don't necessarily read everything that we vote on. So,
I don't think that was in the.
right.
I think
well,
that
it
was an
a-
administrative thing that came.
Right,
much later.
and obviously, unless somebody wants to file another lawsuit or something like that, maybe. I doubt that's going to change, but, ultimately, I just don't see why we wouldn't move forward to that and, look at the next opportunity, because ultimately, there are certainly projects that have needs. Ultimately, I don't really see what the purpose is of banking all of this money when we can't use our Prop A money. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm kind of stuck as to how are we going to deal with that? Is it just that we're banking money for a big project? Is that what the plan is?
There isn't a plan right now. I think that's what, going back and having community meetings is intended to determine.
So we have a plan to have a plan.
You have a plan to have a plan, and let's, again, Shadow Oak has been a high priority. If that's something that the powers that be wanted to pursue, $300,000 doesn't get you
Right.
much. And so the recommendation, or what you would have to do to obtain that bit of money is to bank it.
So we'll basically take the $1 million that's remaining, and hopefully, while we're banking the other money, I guess, over the time frame, because we're still able to bank the money, notwithstanding the fact that we're not able to allocate it for projects, right? Is that correct?
I think you said 5 years, like you said, yeah.
Even though we're not able to utilize the money because of our surplus in our maintenance funds, we're still able to bank the money from Prop A, right?
You're asking about the new funds versus the old funds, right?
Yeah.
I'm asking
The new
about
project funds or the new
yeah.
maintenance funds? The new
Well-
maintenance funds we can't touch until we expend the
Right.
old ones. If we want to do a project for $300,000, we could do that.
Right, okay, so, but what I want to understand with regard to the thing about the new maintenance funds is that the new maintenance funds, as I understand it, allow you to spend money on personnel, right? Whereas the old ones do not. Was that incorrect?
Only if it's directly, according to what it said, only if it's.
Right, directly
Right.
directly
Like
corresponding
splash
to
pad.
the new project, correct?
That's why I read it, yeah.
Well, the old one, we're paying staff time as well.
Okay.
But
It's not, it's task oriented, it's not something where it's like you can allocate that money for an employee to consistently work, at the site of a project, right? That's the difference that I understood.
Well, that's what we're doing with the splash pad. We have people who maintain that and who code their time there accordingly.
Right, but it's task oriented, not, it's not like they're there all the time for a specific purpose, correct?
Right.
Okay, or for a non-specific purpose, I should say.
Right.
Okay, all right.
Jose?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I clarify, because I'm kind of following what you're saying. So the attachment 2 is not taken out of the $2 million remaining balance yet, correct?
Correct.
So after that, you're correct, it's about $1 million. If I read correctly the staff report, so Shadow Oak was quoted about $500,000 to do the lower parking lot, right?
Yes.
So that was still the way to go.
No, I'm sorry, it was the restroom that was $500,000.
Oh, 500,000. So would it be safe to say that the two together would deplete that million and allow us to get into the new funds? Because that's basically what we're trying to say is we can't spend we can't spend the new funds until we use the old funds,
But we
right?
can't use the old funds on new projects.
Yeah, well, the old funds are maintenance of the old.
So we have to use those strictly for
That's the
maintenance.
problem.
Yeah, this would be
Because they
considered
don't need
a
maintenance.
new project
Gotcha.
and not maintained.
So we've got $1 million we have to spend on maintenance. That's taken us this long to spend
And
$2
on
million.
things that don't require maintaining.
Right.
May I say something about that? I know when we had the meeting back in May, and it was brought up, I think it was May, somehow outside these walls, people in the community learned about that money and went berserk. You remember? It
People
was,
within
they
these
said,
walls.
well, I know I didn't say anything, but they got word. I don't know if it was by watching the video or what, but they decided, our community decided, if you've got $2 million, bring it on. And they don't understand all of the ins and outs and the requirements of that money. And I myself tried to educate them and got beat up so bad. And I just know when they learn about the new funds and that we can't find a way to spend the old funds, they're going to find out again. And it just brings such bad ill will to the city. Because we have, everyone knows we have financial problems, and there's the solution in their minds. So just be prepared.
Well, it's not that we're having a problem identifying where to spend the money. It will be spent over time.
Yeah.
And I know what you're saying, that because that happened internally as well, that a couple of my coworkers learned about that and got problem solved and so forth, and said, no, you don't understand. And
I think it's.
there was an article, there was an article in the Tribune, I believe, that.
That's what I read.
I'm sorry.
I think it's just a good reminder that when it's time to spend the new funds, because we've spent this money, we should have a fully approved, fully thought out, fully detailed, ready to execute plan.
Absolutely.
I think it's just a reminder that we got to plan ahead. Let's say it takes us 2-3 years to spend this money, which would be about $300,000 times 3. We should have a plan ready to spend that, or whatever project is ready to go. Everybody has looked at it. The community is. This is what they want. We already know that.
Be completely
I've got
transparent.
I've got a couple questions. Though. One is for Measure A funds. I know we can't. The maintenance and servicing money, will that also accumulate even if we don't do a new project, or is that maintenance and servicing $78,000 a year about? Is that attached to only?
That will accumulate as well.
Okay, so we could get up to 5 years of the $300,000-ish plus the $80,000-ish. Okay. The other thing I want to know is Measure A says there's a part that's a pro rata share, and then there's a part that's a competitive. There's a part that we could actually compete for, right? In Measure A, the new money.
Right.
Or did I read that wrong?
Right. So,
Regional projects.
Yeah.
Talking about regional projects, yeah.
And can you tell me a little bit about that? So the 300 grand is mainly just like, we didn't apply for any special grants or regional projects or anything. That's just money coming. So then, what's the regional project, and how do we get more of this Measure A funds?
have to, I guess that would be a competitive application in which we submitted something that we would consider or make the argument that it's a regional type of activity. It'd have to be a larger scale type of thing.
Can you tell me a little bit more about what they define as a regional activity?
I'd have to investigate that.
Because I think 300 grand is great every year if we accumulate that and add it up, but I think more would be even better if there's competitive grants that we could win over to West Covina. I mean, we're kind of a pretty big staple in the San Gabriel Valley area. I mean, so why wouldn't we get a lot more of that, if we could apply for that? So I had those couple questions. The other thing is, what is your recommendation that we could go out to the community and find out, highlight different things we can do to make that attachment 2 list longer? Do you have, I mean, you've been here for a very long time. What are your recommendations that we could go out to the community and kind of get ahead of the narrative and see what we could do to spend $1 million on things that are absolutely needed and absolutely wanted and probably been covered up for some time?
Well, I'm sorry, the million has to be associated with these
With-
projects that are complete and
Yes.
within the project scope of what was done.
Yes, understood, fully understood. So pretty much going off just this, the attachment 1, sifting through all those things, whatever we could do to maintenance and service these things, we have about $1 million to maintain and service these things, right?
Right.
So what are your, how have we done this in the past, where we find out from the community what?
Well, to spend new money, we've done park assessment things, but I think we're not communicating.
That's an old one, that's from
Right, it's an old one.
17.
So I don't know if there's precedent, because apparently we haven't been doing much with it, and that's why there's a huge balance. So I think your question of what have we done, since we have a huge balance, I would say nothing.
Do we have any ideas of like, because I think there is a perception issue, with what the community thinks we can do.
Yes.
But if we go out to the community and we find out exactly what are the needs for these already completed projects in parks. We'll get ahead of the narrative a little bit, but it's not really about that. It's about more are the things that we can bring up to the surface. I know Mike knows the ins and outs, and so I'm sure he's got his own list too of how to maintain and service this, and he'd be a great resource. But if, you guys, this is the best experience here. So if you guys have ideas, we can put some legwork to it.
That would mean district meetings.
That may be a topic that requires a lot of research too, because there's things that we could probably look at. Like I was just going through some of the completed list, and so one of the things that I was noticing, obviously there's things where we've done baseball fields at Del Norte Park, we've done restrooms at Palm View, we've done playground equipment at Palm View, we've done some things at Shadow Oak. They're all over the place. But I guess where to spend that money is interesting, because if those things can be maintenance with that money, I guess we would have to show the need for the maintenance too, right? We can't just go in and say, hey, it was maintenance 2 years ago, but we're going to do it again because we got to blow this money.
Right. And that's the thing. It's got to be pre-approved. The county has to consider it. We get the pre-approval, then we go spend it, and then show them the invoices, and then they reimburse us. So, to your point, we just can't go out and re-spend the money on the same thing just to get it spent out.
So on that topic, one of the things that I don't know if you guys noticed is the list doesn't really give you, at least I didn't see it, and I could be blind and old, but I don't see where it shows when these projects were done. So it doesn't give us a timeline. So I'll give you an example. If you go back, I remember when the Palmview Park got the playground equipment, because at the time I was the Little League president at that park, and I remember the construction. So we're probably looking at about 8 years ago that took place, ballpark. I could be off by a year or two. And so you're looking at that window of time. So some of the other ones, I don't know if they're in chronological order, if they're grouped together by park, if they're grouped together by any type of thing. I think that year, to Dr. Zach's point, I think the year of when these were completed could help us determine some areas where maintenance is needed. Because if something on here was done 10 years ago and hasn't been maintained enough, that could be, that could be an area of concern. Whereas if you look at one of these and it was done, like the splash pad was probably 5 years ago, right? 5, 6. So there's things that are newer. And I think without that year time frame, I think that we would be beating our heads against a wall tonight on this. And so for me, I think this would have to come back for direction, or with more detail, or I don't think we would do it any justice if we didn't do that. So that's kind of my opinion.
Yeah, okay, so one of the projects was a Shadow Oak Rec Center. Rec Center, Shadow Oak Park Rec Center is used heavily if we go back to, the usage numbers. I've walked through that rec center. Definitely looks like it could take some maintenance and servicing that would make it look like a city of 120,000 people rec center, especially if we have future plans to spend money in Shadow Oak Park. So, you could spend a lot of money there. And when I say spend a lot of money, I don't want to sound wasteful, because it is the people's money, but, you guys get the context, right?
But in the case of Shadow Oak, the rec center, the only scope of the work was just replacing the flooring, 4,100 square feet of flooring. So we could do something with that, but we couldn't do like a re-roof or a repaint of the thing, that sort of thing.
Do you know when that floor was replaced?
No, I don't, because I could find out and bring that back. The grant number, the year here, the 2-digit number represents the year, but that won't tell you when the project was done or completed, because these could have been approved and done quickly, or they could have taken quite a while to come to fruition.
So on that subject, for instance, you're right, because the fitness equipment says if you're going on the 2-digit number is 95. My son wasn't even born yet, and I remember it being done while he played Little League, so that would be a very difficult thing to have happen. Kind of thing, or it just kind of a thought process. So I agree, the year there doesn't really. Yeah. That was 5 years before he was born. So yeah, Yeah, I think a more realistic knowledge, my opinion again, I think a more realistic knowledge of when these projects were done, completed, and then maybe even.
Steve, just so you know, the project year is actually included in the grant number.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the project year. You're right, but like if you go to that column you want about the fitness equipment, it says 95. My son was born in 2000.
Right.
And he was playing Little League when it was done, so.
Yeah, no, obviously these projects were not completed necessarily
Right.
that year, but, you know.
I think
it
more where
gives
I'm
you a-
going is the completion year.
Right,
And
yeah,
then
no, I
maybe,
get what you're saying.
maybe understand above that, kind of going on what Dr. Zach said is, you know, when were they maintenance last time? What did we do to maintenance them? Because there are some cases, like he mentioned, Chappaqua, maybe the flooring isn't the perfect example, maybe we can't do anything, maybe we can, but I don't have a year when the flooring was replaced, and, you know, it's hard to say, let's go replace the flooring again type of thing.
It's a bad condition, it can be.
Yeah, even if.
Right, exactly, it could be redone, and that would qualify, but, and that's, to his point is that's kind of where we're going, and I kind of agree, but I think we would have to have the years.
Sure.
Not so much the grant year, but the completion year.
Right.
And then, if we have had maintenance since then, what was it, and when was it done? Because, again, if we did the floor, and we just replaced bad sections of the floor a year ago, 2 years, 5 years ago, maybe it doesn't need to be done, maybe that's not a good case. And so it's, I mean, my personal opinion is, I think from tonight's perspective, if I had to give my advice, I think this is something that we need to have come back. And I think that we need more detail onto the dates. So, I mean, for me, that would be my motion, is to have this come back at the next meeting with that detail.
I would support that. Like, just look at, I mean, Walmart Park improvements, general improvements include, and then it's got a whole list of things, so does that give us more flexibility when we go back to the county?
3 years ago.
I'm sorry, which one are you looking at?
Walmart Park improvements, it's on the last one of the.
Yeah, there's 1995.
And that's,
Yes.
we put 95 grand back then, so as far as servicing, maintaining that, and that has a lot more, I mean, from sodding to backstop to restrooms to the snack bar to roof repair pump. I mean, maybe that even has an expansion on the restroom, so even if the restroom wanted to be touched up or anything, or we could. But
I think that was included
that one's in
in the
section
attachment.
attachment.
Yeah, I think so. Right, at 100,000, but that might be additional things. That was just for the restroom. If we wanted to do some other things there attending to the scope, then that would be eligible.
Yeah, I would support bringing this back.
So, that's my motion.
Anyway, getting back to Shadow Oak, outside of that, I was just there for a party two Saturdays ago, birthday party, and the outside needs painting really bad right now, the wood part of it, you know. As far as the inside, it's still got 1 foot square tiles on. We did that my company did about 20 years ago, roughly. Just like this carpet right here, this is still 20 years old, this carpet.
Yeah, that's something I have, looking at, we talking about all these that cost a lot of money. But what is it for those small things that need, like he was saying, some of the jacuzzis, I guess you call, not jacuzzis, but gazebos. The barbecue things in them, the bottom, on the ones that have been there, the original, since the park was there, the bottom is falling out. I consider it a safety hazard myself. But nobody's done anything, so how, is that considered a regular maintenance thing, or is that something that comes under this?
That's likely a regular maintenance thing.
But it's been that way for almost a year.
I don't think we've been installing any gazebos.
You know, like the fencing gets torn up every 6 months. Is that a regular maintenance item, or is that something that has to fall in there?
Depending, because it looks like there were a couple of fencing things in here, and in all likeliness, it's a regular maintenance thing.
Okay, so those things wouldn't come to me if I, as,
Right, it's only what's identified in the scope of these completed projects on this attachment 1 under description for these projects.
Kelly, how do we get flexibility on this?
We don't. It's just that that's how the propositions were passed. And
It's all about what was written in the proposition when it made it to the ballot.
I totally get that, but
Yeah.
I mean, if the flooring needs to be done, does that mean it includes the baseboard? And if the baseboard is touching the outlet, does that include the outlet? And if the outlet is on that patch of the wall, does that include the, how do we get flexibility?
As the baseboard, but yeah.
There's flexibility in a lot of these things, I think.
We
If you do it the
propose it,
county
all they can do
directly.
is tell us no.
I say you have to send this for approval, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So your flexibility is promote as much as you can,
right,
Mhm.
hope for
and then
something.
tell
Yeah.
them to basically say, we'll approve this, but we
Kinda
won't
like
approve
suing
that.
them.
That's basically what you're asking is,
Yeah.
present a lot,
Yeah.
expect it to be cut back.
Mm.
It's a fair approach. So, like I said, I think we go with a, come back to the next meeting.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, just to
Year.
get clear, what would you like
Um,
to see
so-
as the year of completion?
Yeah, so for me, I think the motion, and you guys can throw in, I'm open to modifications, but bring back with more data as to when the year of completion for these projects, and then also a list of maintenance and year of maintenance for each of these completed projects, so we can look at it both from an age perspective as well as a detail of what was maintained perspective, to help us kind of guide, hopefully spending. And again, like Dr. Zach said, I don't want to blow $1 million, but I understand that we are going to have to use it. Right, it's one of those caveats where you don't want to do, as he said, wasteful, and I totally get your context. You don't want to look wasteful, but you have this money, let's use it in areas where we need it. Let's get through it and move on to the next money, and I think we're all kind of there. So like I said, I think my motion would be to bring it back with those criteria, and it's up to you guys if you want to add anything. I'm willing to adjust.
I would just add that you want to have sort of a breakdown of the expenditures for those individual, maintenance projects that came after. That way we know how much, it costs to do X or Y. So we have an idea of, what the approximate cost is going to be for that if we say, hey, we recommend you move forward with doing this as opposed to that. So we kind of have an idea on, numbers, because we know what it is. It's what, 900 and some odd thousand or something that's left.
Let's do amend with that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay, do we have a second to Steve's motion?
yeah. I'll
Bring it
second
back.
it.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Before we go to ad hoc committee, how about Major H grant for the homeless? Is that going to happen in September when you hire the 5 people?
Yes, we just executed the contract with the county. So that did get finalized. The city of West Covina is the lead agency for that project. And so as a lead agency, we contracted with the county. We're working through an MOU with the 5 other cities. And so that's now with the attorneys and its second revision. And so we anticipate that that's going to come together fairly quickly because it's a fairly simple arrangement. And for those of you unaware, the City of West Covina and partnered with the City of Azusa, City of Covina, Glendora, and Duarte to apply for a collaborative grant with the for Measure H funding with the County of Los Angeles, and we were awarded I think it's $325,000, and we're all matching that with in-kind contribution. And what that is going to do is to locate a housing navigator at each of the city sites. And so we're looking forward to getting that going soon. And that's going to get people into the county system to help them get into services and so forth. And so we anticipate that coming together soon.
Will that be one in each city or just one for all of us?
One in each city.
Yeah, 5 total.
And we had City of West Covina applied we submitted an individual city application for the similar thing. That was denied, but they asked us to resubmit, and so we did, and we resubmitted for motel vouchers, which are desperately needed in the area. And we did get approved for that, for $100,000 in motel vouchers. So we just got notified of that fairly recently, so we haven't worked through that contract. We've reached out to the East San Gabriel Valley Coalition of the Homeless, which has worked with us in the past in the distribution of vouchers, and we think that they will be helpful once we get the Housing Navigator on board. So that's very early, and we haven't been talked to about getting a contract together on that yet.
What's the $100,000 translate to in vouchers?
I'm not certain. It's probably $50, 50 and 9, 60 and 9.
That's kind of where I was going, but I was just curious what they got. If they got a bulk rate.
And so we're going to be, this collaborative group of the 5 cities is looking at selecting a contractor. We got to have a conference call this week scheduled to determine how we're going to proceed with that. The county has a vetted list of service providers that we could select. So we're going to see how we want to proceed with that.
Very good, Kelly, thank you. Okay, we move on to the ad hoc committee reports. Seeing none? How about commissioner reports?
Well, I forgot what I did.
Go around the table. Dr. Zaki, anything?
Oh, I remember.
Yeah, we, August 17 on Saturday, once a year we do free dentistry for people in the community that are underprivileged. And this year we hosted the YWCA community. And they came with their kids, and it was a pretty, it was great. The whole team comes and volunteers their time, and the kids coming out, it's just good to see that. What it did is it allowed the kids to see a different part of the community and kind of get an experience different than what they get in that one home, and that was great. And it allowed people to build more contacts and connections with them, and hopefully it grows and continues to grow.
Very good, thank you. Elbert? Gail?
I can't remember. Maybe we need to meet once a month.
Because we didn't meet for so long, I'd like to say I attended the 4th of July presentation with the lasers, and it was fabulous. What I really liked about it was safe for dogs. You know how dogs suffer on the 4th of July, and many people brought their dogs to it, and it was the kids and the people. The only bad thing about it was so crowded, which is not a bad thing. It was wonderful, and I think the community really appreciated it, and it saved the city a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, there you
Thank
go.
you. Nick?
I have nothing.
Nothing? Steve?
I attended Night Out. It's been a while since we've been here, so that was in August, I believe. I think I attended that.
Okay, yeah.
So I did do that. At least one of the first venues. I didn't travel around with the traveling parade of city officials. I kind of stopped after the first one or two. But yeah, I attended that. I thought that's always a great event. So I was glad to do that. I don't think, I did go to Porto's. It's been a while, but I did go to Porto's a long time ago. But that's about it. I've been pretty busy and looking forward to some of the upcoming events that are coming up. Maybe I missed it, but did we get a notice of the West Covina Youth Soccer opening night? No, that happened a week ago? I didn't see it, so I just wasn't sure I would have attended if I'd known, and I didn't see anything come out. I was curious if I missed it or if you guys all got it. So that would be the only thing I would look at, is to see if there's something we can look at for future endeavor. I know you're usually really good, so I think that one just slipped through, but.
I didn't know about it until it happened, so.
Even better.
But it's because I'm not at the center anymore.
Yeah, even better. So I think we have some other things coming up. I mean, it's football season. I don't know if the Bruins have done theirs. I'm sure there's others. I'd like to see some of that stuff. Make sure we get those invites, because I enjoy going out to those types of things. And so I just, like I said, I missed a few. Otherwise, I would have more reports. That's about it for me.
Good, thank you, Steve. Dan? Nothing? Paul? No?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Glad to be on the
Next time.
commission.
Good, thank you. Well, I did a couple things. The night out was great. And next year, if you do go around, be sure and stop at Aspen Village. They have, the food is fantastic, the fire department was there, the police were there. I mean, it was really good. And I attended a couple of the concerts in the park here, and we've had a lot of extra meetings, attended, you know, the special meetings at city council and everything. But it's been a fun time, so anyway. Anything else before we adjourn?
I have one. So on an items we agenda is one of the things that was brought up at a council meeting a while back, and somebody asked about doing some sort of a dedication for Phil. So I've been asking around for that, and I believe that we do something with Arbor Day typically, or have some sort of a tree dedication or something. So I'd love to find out more about that. It was brought up at a council meeting. I don't know if the council's looking to do something. I think personally it should probably come from our commission, since he was a commissioner on this commission.
Yes, it'd be nice.
So while I know it was brought up at a council meeting, and I know it was brought up by another commissioner from another commission, you know, he brought up like, and everyone started mimicking statues and all kinds of stuff. I'm not looking for that. You know, I'm not using his words. That was more what people started joking about. I'm just looking to say I agree. He was a good guy. He and I didn't always agree politically, and that's okay, because we had many spirited debates. But I do think it would be kind of a cool thing to look at whatever our tradition is for dedicating to someone, whether it be a tree, a bench, or something. I think we should look at what those options are, and I think it's something that we as a commission should look at from a cost perspective, and see if it's something we can recommend. Again, coming out of our commission, because this is where he was, and I think it would be a good honor. I'm not looking for a statue or a bust or anything like that, but we can put his name on a tree. That would be awesome. So hopefully that makes sense.
Very good, thank you. Anything else?
I actually did want to bring up one other thing. Dr. Zach was bringing up a question of how can we get flexibility? Well, you know, one of the things that I think is kind of lacking, I think, in terms of how local governments communicate, you know, between one another about things, sort of shortcomings as far as budgetary issues. You know, we all hear, oh, you know, police and fire have massive PERS obligations, etc., but we don't really ever talk about you know, these impacted funds that are passed via proposition, that, you know, end up accruing large amounts of funds, like, for example, the maintenance fund from the open space bonds that were passed, you know, years and years ago. So, you know, one thing that I think would be really helpful is if, you know, we can recommend that council take a sort of a proactive role in the COG, and say, look, where is it that individual cities are having trouble spending money on certain proposition-based projects, so that we can go lobby Sacramento and say, hey, you guys need to put this on the ballot so that people can vote to allow for flexibility on these funds that we are not able to spend in any kind of a responsible way. This is one of the problems that you were identifying. You're saying, oh, let's go ahead and, you know, let's not go ahead and blow through $1 million, you know, like it's nothing. And, you know, ultimately we're stuck with either taking the tack of blowing $1 million, okay, potentially in a possibly irresponsible way, so that we can get to the next funds. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, when we could be spending that money potentially in a more responsible way. And I think if we have the COG looking at things in that manner, and lobbying jointly, potentially we can get some movement on those issues, so that these are things that can be presented. If there needs to be oversight on these things, fine, great, you know, fine, dandy, wonderful, move forward. But the funds should be spent in a responsible manner, regardless of, you know, what the overarching intention was at the time. And unfortunately, I think that, you know, like so many things, we just spend until we deplete those funds without really any idea of, well, is this really good for the people overall? And I think that that's sort of a sad thing. I mean, I just look at the train to nowhere, Prop 1A. Again, guilty. I stupidly voted for that nonsense back in 2008, okay? I did it, guilty. But you know what? We need to be able to adapt. And I think that's that's the problem with our government. So I think that's a recommendation that needs to go to the council.
I got one thing, I'll bring it up next time when Mike is here, but on Cortez Park, when Bruin football's there on Saturdays, after the second game, which is about 5 o'clock or so, people going across the street because they're parked on either side because it's overflow parking. It's dangerous. I think they used to have patrol there. These people walk out and they got the kids, they got their cooler, they got their umbrella, they got their chairs, and the adults are worse than the kids. They run right in front of cars. And it's really, and the people that are going down Citrus know their school's not in session, so they're going a little faster. I saw it happen the other day, and it was not good. But I don't know what to do about it.
Yeah, it sounds like something traffic committee's not doing anything about.
Yeah.
You got an issue with traffic committee.
Anyway, we'll bring it up next time. So, if nothing else,
Motion to adjourn.
we'll stand adjourned. Thank you very much for coming.
I know you do.